Hey folks, this episode of Fall Obsession Podcast is brought to you guys in partnership with Hoot Camo, Bear River Archery, Tacticam Reveal, and the Outdoor Call radio app. If you guys are interested in some discount codes that these partners have put together specifically for our show listeners, then I encourage y'all to go to the episode description wherever you guys are streaming this podcast from, and you will find those codes listed there along with links to go shop with those partners. Be sure that you guys are following the show on whatever platform you're streaming on. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Head on over to the social media pages and give us a like and a follow. We always appreciate that support from you guys. I am your show host, Sam Thrash, and my guest this week is Brett Smith from Whitetail Land Management Services. If you guys are a whitetail hunter, you are going to love this show. Hope you guys enjoy. You are listening to another Fall Obsession podcast.
The power lies within that middle ground.
Hunting transformed my life.
I think you have to be built somewhat different.
That Dale Brisby's a super puncher.
It's when you get Pop-Tarts on the next Walmart order. I'm serious.
Because to come into this country and stay dedicated to that, it was pretty awesome.
If it's only for one, then you've done your job.
We have to do what's right for the wildlife, and that's our responsibility as hunters.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode. I'm Sam Thrash, hosting you guys. My guest this week is Brett Smith. Welcome to Fall Obsession Podcast, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, man. Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us and chat a little bit about some whitetails, some hunting stuff. And I would like to just, probably like you start most shows, take the opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about who you are and what it is you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I own a company called Whitetail Land Management Services. Basically, we help with property design and a lot of different aspects under that umbrella. Everything from tree stand locations, trail camera locations, food plots, what to plant, where to plant, when to plant. But I would say our bread and butter is helping clients produce income on property so that the operation can fund itself. And a lot of times that's through timber operations. And there's so many different ways to handle your structure or your cover aspect of a property to hold deer in daylight hours. And if we can do it and it coincides with making some money and funding the operation, that's where I find my bread and butter to be, so that a lot of clients, when they bring us on, like, there's a monetary benefit other than the hunting side of things, but there's a monetary benefit for them, hopefully, too, in a lot of scenarios. It doesn't happen every time, but I would say that's our bread and butter. So this year I was everywhere from northern Minnesota to Vermont to Georgia to Texas a couple times, and pretty much everywhere in between, I think, this year, except for Tennessee.
Wow.
So we hit it all in the past 9 months, pretty much.
That's wild. What part of Texas?
Tyler.
Okay. East Texas.
Yeah, east, and then I went west of Fort Worth a little bit too. Just two complete, like, honestly, like, if you get east or west, really, of Dallas there and Fort Worth, like, it's just, you go an hour this way, it's completely different than an hour that way. It looks more like Louisiana, obviously. If you go to the east, you go out to the west, it's more desert-like country.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to adapt and kind of, come up with good plans for each of those areas. Yeah, it's completely different. That's a big state for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm from Texas. I live about an hour west of DFW, and then I hunt like another hour and a half farther west. So I got mesquite trees and like galore, and I got these little scrub oaks. Like I can't get a tree stand higher than 12 feet pretty much. So, which sucks because I love hunting out of a tree. That's my favorite spot.
I'd have to look at my Onyx and see where I was this year and see what even highway takes you straight west out of Dallas. But
it's probably 20, I would imagine.
I bet you I wasn't far from you then this year.
Yeah. Probably not too far off. It is a big state though, so not far for us. Can still be several hours away.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you there, man. I hear you.
So, man, how did you get into this?
Dude, everybody asks that question, and like, I still to this day don't have a good like aha moment or story. It was simply like, started hunting at a really young age in a very like, not prestigious way. Like, we hunted in really hard areas, and that's opposite of what a lot of kids are doing nowadays. But anyway, that helped me fall in love with hunting. I always had quite the obsessive personality, and so like, started shadowing biologists later in life, schooling, and then the thing that honestly helped the most, it's the least sexy answer, is just like traveling the country and going everywhere before I ever offered services. Because when I was coming up, like, there was other guys I was researching who were at least what I thought were reputable at the time, and they're like, oh, I've killed Pope and Young bucks in 3 states and I've serviced 27, and that rubbed me wrong. And I was like, well, how are you going to help somebody in a state you've never even hunted a deer? And how are you going to tell them how to kill deer in that state? They're not all the same. And so when my wife was in doing some secondary schooling, 14-hour days, like just got in the truck and went, and not even like hunting all the time. A lot of times scouting trips just to learn. And so 3 different aspects: shadowing people, 2, schooling, but 3, boots on the ground, man.
Yeah.
Like not taking people's word for their concepts or theories, going out and testing them and seeing and different things like that. I think so often we just hear stuff on the internet and we just apply it. We don't ever question it. And so many things I have found that just like yeah, it doesn't always work everywhere just because so and so said it. So going to these different places was the big driver for me that I think makes me most credible in a lot of these places. I've been everywhere now, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, just even less desirable places. I've always wanted to kill hard deer in hard places, not in so much the score thing for me. I've killed big deer, but like I want to kill deer where nobody else can. So it started with going places most guys didn't want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as that goes, are you looking at, is there a certain genre of property size that you're typically consulting, or big, small, anywhere in between, all of it?
I've worked on 7 acres and I've worked on a couple thousand.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I've worked on some tiny properties in like Michigan, and a lot of times guys wouldn't think those are necessarily worth it. And I always look at their maps first to tell them, hey, let's do an online version. It's gonna be cheaper for you, or let's go do it on site. And like to this day, I still keep in contact with some of those people that only had like 7, 8, 10, 13 acres in like Michigan or some of these other states. So like that feels good because you know you didn't waste anybody's time or money.
Yeah.
Like if they're still talking to you and whatever else, like you know you did a decent job. But no, a couple thousand acres all the way down to like your typical 40 acre, you know, average Joe type parcel.
Gotcha. And so I want to ask you specifically about those 40 acres, and I actually had this on my list for a little bit later, but we're there now.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with a property on that size, what all changes and what is specific and unique to that property that can be implemented to make a difference?
It's all about creating that daylight pattern, man. We talk about food, we talk about cover, we talk about water, but honestly, like if you have good quality cover to start with, that is huntable, and we can put it in a location where you're not boogering it up every time you go out hunting. You think about it, your cover is covered, and if it's good quality cover, they're gonna browse on it. Well, now it's food. Deer get about 80% of their water consumption through natural browse. If you just got good cover, that's enough. So that's like the number one aspect that we focus on properties, and it sounds very plain Jane just saying that. There are probably 10 plus different ways, like broad spectrum, like applications, I would say, that we can do to create that cover. Like there's so many different ways to create it, and in different time frames and different phases. So it's not just as simple as like, let's go cut the trees. Like how, and like, are we making money, and like all these different aspects. But on a parcel that's like 40 acres and below, you got to really focus on the food, or excuse me, the cover, because if you got the cover, he's there in daylight hours, hopefully. Where he's going from there, we don't always know, but at least if he's there in daylight hours, you got to crack at him.
Yeah.
Or if you just got a cool food plot, you'll get a lot of midnight pictures.
Yeah.
So it all revolves around cover on small properties for the most part, depending on what the limiting factor is in the neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine that cover too is gonna it probably influence, or the amount of stands that you can put on that property are probably influenced by that cover as well. If I had to guess, and I will say I don't have a lot of experience personally with small properties. We passed several years with an 800 acre property, and that's what we've been hunting and navigating and everything like that. So apologize, some of my small property questions might seem a little novice, but I've been in the 800 acre world for a little while.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Like I said, I mean, you got to be very strategic. Like when you only got 40 acres, it doesn't take long to booger it up if you're hunting it wrong. So you just got to make sure that it lays out all for predominant winds, or paying attention to what the thermals are doing, what your access direction is, and then, like I said, how to even create that cover, and then hopefully correlate it with some sort of destination food source on your property so that that daylight pattern exists. And it's not going to exist 150 days of the season, but if he does it 7, you got 7 good opportunities to get in there and kill him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. When you put boots on a new property for the first time, what are some of the first things that you notice, and what are some misconceptions that people who are hunting that property, people who are managing that property might have as far as whitetail management goes?
First and foremost, I've been thankful enough to do enough of these properties where very little surprised me when I get on site anymore. Like I know how to read maps good enough where I've looked at thousands and thousands of maps. There's very, very, very rarely, maybe 1 in 50 visits, am I surprised with what I see on site. But the one thing that I would say is like, almost every property I go to, something we have to work on is creating like way more cover in an aggressive manner. People get very no matter what the habitat type is, they get very sentimental with their property. And they think it's good enough already, but like if you want to have a crazy good outcome, you got to do crazy stuff to your property. And so like really like in a timber setting, like really hammering that timber, like really opening canopy and creating the nastiest thicket so that when the leaves come off and the foliage comes off, you still have a thicket that you can't hardly see through. And hopefully a couple of them on a property where a couple bucks can spend time on the property at a time. Everybody likes the food plots, and I get it. I'm obsessed with mine. I'm out there every day working on mine and adjusting and nitpicking this or that. But like, if you don't have thick enough cover, and even if you've created it, they generally don't create it heavy enough. They don't cut enough. That's like the biggest misconception or like the problem that I see when going on properties. Like, yeah, we cut in this bedding area, and I go there, and it's like you cut 10 trees. Like, well, I don't care if that's a 10-acre parcel or a 40-acre or 400. Like, we didn't nearly do enough.
Yeah.
And even with my parcel, like sometimes I got to ask a buddy because sentimental value comes into play when you spent all this money on a place. So you got to make sure you're doing it right. I don't blame them for not hammering it the first time, but it's generally timber related or cover related for sure, man. I go to very few farms where it's just 10 out of 10 ready to rock already.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense entirely. Well, I've seen some of your videos too. Like you're playing with organic food plots and some stuff like that this year. I'm assuming on your own place, or maybe you're working with them on some other places as well. But that's an interesting theory that I don't feel like a lot of folks are, at least not a lot of folks that I see are putting content out where they're showcasing that, I should say. So that's an interesting thing that you're working on.
Yeah, it all started kind of with the health journey thing. I had some major health issues. Next thing you know, I get blood work. I see all the herbicides in my blood, and it was just like, wow, like this is a problem. Now we got kids, we got food plots. Dang flies getting me today. We got food plots right outside the house. So for me to go and spray chemicals right where my kids play, it's like, you're an idiot. Like, don't do that. And so let's find the best way to accomplish this while still being able to plant like the most attractive food sources that people like to plant. There are other methods that people use out there. They'll like plant rye and then crimp it over in the spring. They'll just go with straight native vegetation. And that's fine too, but it's not nearly as predictable as far as movement goes. Like, you're not going to catch a deer come into your little thicket nearly as often as you would a soybean field or something like that. So yeah, there's a couple different methods we're playing with that are different than what other people have implemented in the past. To a certain extent, whether it's the use of fire as the kill off or the quote unquote herbicide, and in certain applications that works well, or just having like a clover chicory base food plot going in there and disking it up and then incorporating stuff where you opened up the canopy of that soil a little bit, and you wouldn't believe how good the germination can be. And then guess what? That clover reflourishes and fills the voids back up and the gaps. So now you have this lush green carpet of clover underneath and your brassicas or your soybeans over the top. So yeah, I'm just trying to do as many different things as I can from that standpoint. And also, I eat these deer.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's a very small, I'm in ag country, so I'm making no difference. But at the end of the day, like that animal that feeds on the plants that are genetically modified, sprayed with God knows how many chemicals in farm country, like, oh, I'm going to take that to my kids and eat it now. Like, if I can make any little difference, I will. And I think it's actually something, just with the big health movement of the past 5 years in our country, a lot of people asked me about this year. And so I kind of said, hey, it's not my job to have the most perfect, pristine looking food plots this year. It's my job to test theories and try things out so that I can pass it on to dozens and dozens and dozens of more people, and maybe hundreds even via social media, or thousands. So that's the whole motivation behind it.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. I mean, we've been in my house too on a little bit of a health kick here past several years too, and my wife is pretty natural minded with a lot of that kind of stuff too, and I'm along for the ride a little bit with some of it, but a lot of respect for that and stuff that I feel like a lot of folks don't think about. You might pick and choose the restaurants you go to and everything because, oh, I'm not going to eat that, but then you're not even thinking about what the deer that you're out there hunting or eating and consuming and stuff like that. So yeah, it makes a big difference for sure.
Especially when you're shooting 5 to 10 of them a year, and like that's your family's like main meal, like whether it's burgers, spaghetti, tacos, steaks, whatever. Like we're eating it multiple nights a week. So if I
Yeah.
can make a difference, I will. And I think we're actually it's gonna be a pain in the ass, but I'm gonna try and I already have it all lined up where I can do some, I don't know if I want to call them studies or experiments, but actually test the amount of herbicide levels in some of our local deer here, through urine samples and stuff like that. Nobody's ever done that before. So a lot of people claim it's not an issue, but a lot of these big biologists are funded by certain people sometimes too. So
Yeah.
I might just do my own little study, and I have access to it now that I've done it on myself. And so, be interesting outcome, hopefully. I mean, it's gonna be interesting either way, but hopefully in a good way, it's interesting. Or maybe there's not a big impact, but I have a feeling it's gonna be pretty drastic. So we'll see. Something I might test this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So from like a planting standpoint, from a land management standpoint, does anything drastic change with the organic component of the food plots, or is it just I understand that I understand the from a the nutrient side and actually what you're utilizing to help it grow and everything like that. We're not using any chemicals. I'm talking more of is it harder to do than your other stuff, or drastically so big differences, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because now, I mean, like, so I used a flamethrower to kill off my weeds, which honestly didn't even work that great to begin with. But like, I pushed that by hand. I was going to create an attachment and a hookup for my side by side, but that felt a little irresponsible to just drag an implement with fire behind my side by side, and every once in a while just check on it. Like, so from that standpoint, it was certainly harder. But also, like, if you're going to do an organic food plot straight up, unless you do like the clover base method, don't go into this thinking it's going to look as pristine as if you used herbicide, and that's okay. If I walked you through my soybean field right now and I showed you all the ragweed that's in there, most guys would have a heart attack because it doesn't look perfect. Little do you know, that's 17% protein too. Like, they'll still eat that.
Yeah.
And so as long as you don't drive yourself crazy thinking it's going to look the same way, and you're okay with a little bit of weeds, which the deer eat, and some broadleafs, which the deer will eat, hopefully, depending on what's in there. No, it doesn't have to be that much more stressful. It doesn't have to be that much more labor intensive. And in fact, maybe it's even easier in the long run if you're mentally prepared for it to not look pretty, because you get to skip a couple steps. Like, you can simply just go out there and disc up soil and apply seed or whatever. You could skip the herbicide step. So I think there's an opportunity for it to even be easier. And honestly, I'm talking about all these complex methods. Dude, we frost seed up here. Go frost seed some clover, chicory, and alfalfa. Mow it with a mower.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
It can be that simple. So it can be easier for sure.
No, I feel like people and I don't know, you can blame hunting shows or social media or whatever, get this idea that this food plot has to be this super well manicured looking place like you see on the outdoor channel and that kind of stuff. And I mean, no harm nor foul. I know guys put in a lot of work to make them look like that. I get it. But in reality, like, what's the blue collar guy truly going to be able to accomplish and stuff like that, and what's going to work for him too. And also, like, and I had a conversation with somebody a couple years ago now, I think, about this, and they were from the standpoint of they don't like the manicure look because they didn't feel like it was natural for the deer either. And I didn't know if you had any experience with that as well, but they said make it a little bit more rugged, make those deer feel a little bit more at home. Or do you think that even matters?
I don't think it matters, but at the same time, like, maybe there's a sense of security if you do have some cool season grasses in there that are 4 to 5 feet tall, and it creates a little bit more structure. We can create that in man-made ways with Egyptian wheat and sorghum and try and create that edge. But never once have I seen an interview with a deer where it's like, I like the manicured food plots more.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's a human thing. So like, we get super anal about those things, but honestly, at the end of the day, like, if you're the only guy with the most food, or like, what, they're going to be in there. It doesn't have to look pretty. That's a human issue, not a deer issue.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. You had mentioned earlier too, I kind of made a comment in passing, something along the lines of, people get hung up on food plots and that kind of stuff as well. Do you encounter properties that are not good for food plots, or that people have to try something else, or what does that look like in your experience? And
yeah, so I've worked with everybody from the 40-acre guy to the Bitcoin billionaire. Man, if you want a good food plot, we can make it happen. How much you looking to put into it? How much work you're looking to put into it? We've done food plots in the Ozark Mountains. I've done food plots on the side of Appalachian Mountains. I've done food plots in whatever, Oklahoma, drought-ridden Oklahoma. If you want it, we can do it. It's what is it going to cost you, and how much time is it going to take?
mm-hmm.
So where there's a will, there's a way. I've never been a place where we can't food plot, but like, also, up in the Appalachians or like in some of these like or up in Maine or like some of these places that are on mountains and there's rock, like there's excavating that's going to have to be done. Our planting methods are going to have to be specific to the area that we're in. We're not going to be able to work up soil like we do in Iowa or Wisconsin or different places. We're going to have to plant different varieties. So where there's a will, there's a way, man. I've never really been to a place where I'm like, this just isn't possible. And I don't care if you got a small budget or a big budget, there's always a way. And one of the main goals is to get that property in 10% food. And sometimes we hit it. Most times we do. Sometimes we don't. But like, I've never been to a property where I'm like, hey, food plotting's impossible for you. And like the coal mining country of the Kentuckys and Ohio's can be rough because a lot of that soil's been depleted. But nah, where there's a will, there's a way, man. But dude, and this is interesting. A lot of people don't hear this side of things, and maybe it'll make you scoff at hunting and how it is a rich man's sport a little bit. But like, I've had guys run propane generators out on food plots, irrigate, drill wells, like just to irrigate food plots, haul in truckloads of topsoil. And it sounds expensive, and it is. But let's say I bring in, it's going to sound like a lot, like $10,000 worth of topsoil. If it's really that important to you and hunting is the thing you love, like I bet a lot of people, not everybody, and I know I'm sounding a little unrelatable here, but like you can find a way. Cut back on this, cut back on that. We all spend money on some dumb stuff.
Right.
So like whether it's 10,000 or 1,000 or $500, you can find that in your budget. Just make sacrifices in other ways. But yeah, man, like where there's a will, there's a way. I've never been to a place where we can't incorporate something some way, somehow.
Yeah. What are, in your experience, kind of along those lines, what are some more lower affordable or lower priced affordable improvements aside from like outside of the food plot world? And I know you spoke earlier about cover, but some improvements that anyone could make, any Joe Blow to their property that in your experience you believe would make might not be a huge significant difference, but little ways to improve things to set themselves up for success.
You don't need a tractor, you need a chainsaw, and you need a bag seeder. You maybe need a hand rake too. That's what it comes down to. If you can open soil, there are different varieties that we can plant that are super resilient that'll grow in a pH of 4.7. Ask me how I know. I've seen it all at this point. So like, guys, if we just simply went out there and broadcasted perennials, and a lot of times like that's our when I create a long-term food plotting plan for a really bad property, sometimes we just start there. One, because it's the most accessible. Like you grab a chainsaw, you open up the canopy, you throw the seed on the ground. But also like a lot of those varieties are super resilient and can grow in less than ideal soil. It'll allow you time to fix your soil, fertilize, lime, do all these things, boost the pH. And that perennial blend that we're going to put down is going to last 4 to 5 years, ideally. You can always add a little bit more seed. If in year 3 you're feeling a little crazy, you can go work up a little bit of soil and maybe add some green blends that we add in late summer to it. There's so many different options, but honestly, you don't need anything more than a chainsaw, a bag seeder, and a good perennial blend. We could add some oats, some wheat, some rye, some cereal grains. Like you don't have to have the big sexy brassicas, radishes, and turnips that you see on TV all the time. And quite often your soil isn't ready for it anyway. So it's a multifaceted plan. If I go to some of these less than ideal properties, guys, bag seeder, chainsaw, and a good perennial blend, and then try to amend your soil and fix your soil over the course of time. But if you just throw that stuff down, it's not going to be the most palatable thing in the world, but you're going to have some green food plots, and I've seen it grow in a pH of 4.6, 4.7. So it's not as ideal as a beautiful soybean field, but you can do it.
Yeah.
And all you need is minimal equipment.
Yeah. No, it's certainly attainable for a lot of folks. I feel like it comes down to just initiative and drive to get out there and do the work in some regard too, and then to stay consistent with it too.
And the one tip I will give is like with food plots, the biggest mistake that I see is people overseed, use too much seed because they can't fathom or comprehend that tiny grain of salt seed can turn into a plant that's extremely large. So they overseed. When you do these perennial plots, you can get away with going 2-3 times over the recommended rate. Like it's just going to fill everything in a little bit quicker. And in fact, the first year I do that in a less than ideal seed bed, leaves and all that stuff, I'm at least doubling the seeding rate. So when people go in there and add those perennials or add those cereal grains, like the oats and the rye and the wheats, like I'm throwing it on. Like to the guy who likes to overseed, that's the stuff you overseed. Like don't do it with your brassicas, your beans, and all these other things. And beans you can do a fair amount over the recommended rate, but it's really hard to screw up, honestly, in those given scenarios. So like, don't be afraid to layer it in when you are applying those initial first-time food plots in places that are less than ideal. You're not going to get 100% germination rate, so compensate for it.
Yeah. You got any tips for a guy down here with dry hot Texas soil?
Yeah, so what we did in Texas actually with some of these food plots is we used something from Whitetail Hill, which is actually a southern food plot company. We did their summer bulk blend. And the nice thing about that is it has really good soil building features in it, like buckwheat and some joint vetch and some other things. This will grow up 2, 3, 4. Mine's 5 feet tall up this far north because we got good, cool climate. But what that does is if you have that up over the top, if I were to take a temp gun and I point it at the barren ground in Texas this time of year with no food plot there or no coverage there, that soil temperature at its surface might be 110 degrees, maybe even hotter. If I were to move that summer bulk aside and I'd shoot it down in there, it might be 65, 70 degrees. What does that mean? It means that we preserved a lot of moisture within the soil. So we could either completely eradicate that spring food plot that has a big canopy and keeps the soil cool and then add something or drill over the top of it. Or like, not that we'd love to use herbicides, but you could use a selective herbicide and like clethodim. Okay, I'm getting in the weeds here already, but like clethodim will kill a couple things in that blend, meaning you'd open up a couple voids. So now you can go sprinkle your favorite green late summer seed over the top of it, but that you'll have more organic matter, you'll have more soil structure, you'll have more moisture. You got to do a spring food plot to create a canopy to preserve the moisture underneath. If you let that sit barren all summer long and then you try to do like a late summer food plot or like you try to put something in for you guys in September, even maybe October, like hopefully you got moisture, but if you just went through a long summer drought, maybe you get some cereal grains to grow, maybe.
Yeah, nothing that's really going to be worth anything. Yeah.
Preserve the soil while you do have moisture early in the season. Preserve the moisture the best you can by planting something that's going to create a canopy and ultimately just protect the soil. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. No, makes total sense for sure. We've had to deal with the landowner that we lease this property from. The property has so much potential, but a lot of my management efforts thus far have kind of been thwarted by the cattle that he also leases to the neighbor, and that has just, I've pulled my hair out at times at that, and definitely envious of guys in Texas that don't have to deal with that, because there's a lot of hunting leases down here that are also cattle leases, and it sucks.
Cattle down south can be a pain in the ass, kind of like wolves up north are a pain in the ass. Like there's only so much you can do. Like you can't really get around it, and it just is what it is. You got to do your best to work around it. But cattle is one of the biggest like downfalls to hunting properties, and I got a lot of properties where there's been cattle on them in the past too, and it is what it is. It's not ideal, but it's better than having no place to hunt.
No, absolutely, I'd agree with that for sure. So how long, and I get that it depends on what people invest in it, but how long do you feel like it takes on average for people to start seeing the results and kind of the fruits of their labor when it comes to their management practices and stuff like that? Because, at least in my experience, it's not necessarily something of instant gratification necessarily. So, I mean, not really at all, but in your experience, how long before people start seeing a difference in their deer, what their deer are doing?
One off season. You need one full off season of you putting in this work and the sweat equity to like finally get some good results. And it's going to take, honestly, to like meet maximum results, at least 3 years, if not 4 or 5. But you can make a big difference in one off season. So if you go hard from December or even maybe February until spring green up, and you really try to implement at least one of the big projects after we come to a property, you're going to see a dramatic increase. If your property is a 2 or 3 out of 10, we're going to be able to jump it up into a 6 relatively quickly. But like to get to that 10, it might take you 5 or 6 years, because now if we go in and we cut timber, just because you cut it doesn't mean that everything regenerated right away. Mother Nature has to do its thing and let that cover come back. So like those things take time. But no, you can make a significant jump. You can make your property twice as good as it was with one good off season of putting in a lot of work. So it really only takes one off season. But like if you're a 2 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10, we can jump you up to a 4, 5, or 6 in no time, as long as you're willing to put some work in. Maybe it's money for the certain guys or whatever, but like one off season.
Yeah,
you can do it.
No, makes sense. Yeah, it comes down to putting the time in for sure.
How bad do you want it? Like anything else in life.
Exactly.
And it's kind of weird to say that about hunting, because we all take hunting a little too serious sometimes. I mean, look at me. I turned it into my job, quite honestly. But, if you want a better hunting property, you can do it in an off season. You just got to know. And here's the thing. This isn't even a plug for me. You can hire somebody else. But, like, knowing that you're moving in the right direction. it's easy for me to say I get to do this for a living. So like I can go to somebody's property and just da 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 da, we're doing this, and it's easy. But like if you're just watching YouTube videos and you're taking your best stab at it, I hate to say it, like I posted YouTube videos, like you really gotta pick and choose the information that you apply to your property because it's all generalizations. Unless somebody comes and looks at your place that's seen a lot of properties, been to your neighborhood, you're guessing. So you better feel pretty confident in the decisions you're making before you go make these big mass changes to your property. Otherwise, have somebody else, have somebody that's familiar with your area, bend to your area. Even if it's not me, that's cool. I'd rather see people do that instead of blow tens of thousands of dollars by making big mistakes.
Yeah, and that was kind of something after you said that came to mind was, and I know that you yourself have like you mentioned at the beginning, have traveled all over the place and have experience in all these different states and different regions of the country at this point. But if I'm Joe Blow down here, just watching you up in the north, working on stuff and thinking it's just copy and paste going to apply to me and my mesquite thickets down here in Texas, I'm probably going to be wrong. I'm probably going to be disappointed. So there has to be that local component too, unique to your area.
Bingo. And that's why I don't know why it ever tripped my trigger. Like, I guess it rubbed me wrong that certain guys weren't doing that. And that's why I decided to. And that's why I've hunted down by San Antonio. I've hunted up on the Red River. Like, I've spent time in these areas. And it's not like because the biggest bucks in the country were there, because that's what most guys will do. They just go and chase the biggest bucks they can. But, like, at my core, one thing I've learned about myself, and I definitely got it from my mom, is I just like helping people. And I think I like challenging myself too. So when those two things combined, and then I went to places I wasn't familiar with or weren't the most like attractive places to go hunt, but then I could like learn and then help people. I don't know. I guess that's just what interested me. And next thing you know, the company kind of exploded, and now we're at the point where we got to expand. But yeah, you got to have somebody that's familiar with your area. Just because somebody kills a 300-inch deer in Iowa doesn't mean they know anything about East Kentucky. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you really got, when hiring somebody, you got to make sure somebody's familiar with your area, your species, your landscape, your drought, your whatever those different components are, for sure.
Yep, exactly. So I want to get into a little bit with you on kind of the deer more specifically. We've talked a little bit about habitat, about the food plots and that kind of stuff. But excuse me, when it comes to the actual animals and where I'll start off this conversation is, can you outwork genetics with nutrition? I guess we'll start there.
You can make a 10% increase.
10% increase. Okay.
I'll keep it simple. If you're on a very serious feeding plan, you can make a 10% increase. You're never going to change either the genetic potential of your property by culling certain deer. But here's what I can tell you is that if you shoot a bully 8-pointer, somebody else moves in. Mm-hmm. Who's it going to be? And if he's genetically superior, well, now you just save that buck for a couple of years and move on. But you're never going to change the genetic makeup of your property from a culling standpoint. But feeding, yeah, and there's scientific evidence out there that shows that you can get a 10% increase in antler production by doing a very serious feeding program.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's always I don't know. I feel like in my world at least, and granted, I'm 5 years into a frustrating management plan on a frustrating Texas property. I'll put it that way. That's my level of experience right now. But we've had nice deer. We've had a couple in particular. It's like, dude, where did that deer come from? That thing's huge. Yeah. But for the most part, we're looking at, especially last year, is like almost copy and paste from buck to buck. It was 130-inch 8, 130-inch 8. That's what we were looking at out there constantly, it felt like. And so all the conversations were happening on, okay, well what can we change? Can we feed differently? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I get that the genetics to a point are the genetics that we have out there and that kind of thing. But I don't know. This year it was different because we've had a very wet year for Texas, and so I'm looking at deer this year that are improved. The same deer from last year that have improved significantly, in my opinion, for this year. And then I guess I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I guess where I can ask something that's relevant to me and probably relevant to a lot of people listening is what about the neighbors? Because you can be doing everything right, and then you have neighbors that are shooting shooting spikes, shooting little deer and everything. And I get that that's stuff that's out of your control and everything to a certain extent. But in your experience, what have those relationships looked like, and what have you done or suggested people do to try and make an impact in that world?
Yeah, you just got to communicate with people, and that's the biggest thing. And then you know who's going to be on your side and who's not. And even if they tell you that they are, like, you kind of get a good feeling just from talking to those people at the end of the day. The one thing I do kind of want to go back to in your conversation
Sure.
there is Texas is the hardest place to manipulate habitat because Mother Nature just doesn't care down there.
No.
And so, like, you have to do everything you can from a man-made standpoint possible. So what I would recommend from a feeding standpoint is, like, it's the day, like, your rut, not that it ends on a day, but like the day your rut ends and these deer lose a significant amount of body weight, 20 to 30%, that is when your feeding program starts, and it ends the day that the velvet drops. And now that's the time of the year in which these deer are bouncing back from the rut, and then obviously putting on body mass and then putting on antlers. So if you want to make the biggest difference, that is your time frame in which feeding needs to be taken the most serious. In season, like, do something different than your neighbors to maybe make your feed a little bit more attractive. But, like, don't go out there spending a bunch of money on 20% protein, 30% protein, 10% protein feed, because they don't need it during that time of the year. So focus on that, the day the rut ends, in theory, to the day the velvet drops. That's, if you want to grow bigger deer, that's when it's done. It's not done during season. But from a neighboring standpoint, man, if there was ever a state where I think neighbors matter the least, it's Texas, because we're hunting, like, what you guys don't realize down there. This fly is just tearing me up here. You guys have big properties down there, and I know, like, 800 acres doesn't feel like a big ranch compared to some of these 10,000 acre ones, but, like, if you have everything a deer needs, in theory, he doesn't have to leave 8 acres or 800 acres for a big portion of the season. So, like, sometimes it's not what can we do to deter, like, what can we do with these neighbors? It's what can we do to just hold, what piece of the puzzle are we missing that these deer aren't staying on our 800 acres, 400 acres, 250 acres? Like, those are big enough parcels to hold deer during longer portions of a season. And I know it's easy to get lost in the sauce when you see your neighbor has 10,000, but, like, 800's enough. And if you're not holding them and the neighbors are killing them, you're not doing something right. You're accessing wrong, your feeding program's off, you're overhunting the property. There's a lot of different variables there. You don't have the habitat. But in a scenario like yours, depending on layouts and things like that, there's always variables. There's things that we can just do on your property to make your neighbor's property way less desirable.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you can, and that's how you got to attack it, because you can't do much about neighbors sometimes. Like, you could tell an old man to shoot more does all you want, but if he ain't gonna, like, if that's not how he's brought up, you could tell him all the science in the world, and it ain't gonna change his mind.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you're familiar with the Texas world, the Texas way of hunting and everything. And for guys that do, like, we have some feeders on our property as well, and for guys that run baiting sources, whether it's Texas or not, do you have any recommendations on anything specific that they can do with that, or a balance between, you know, the feeder food plot ratio, or what that needs to look like for your baiting states?
At the end of the day, if you're trying to grow the biggest deer possible, you need that feeding program from the day the rut ends until the velvet drops. You need to focus on at least 20% protein feed, and sometimes we even use a higher protein feed, like a 30%, even though the deer, in theory, can only digest upwards of 20, just because, like, there are native species that have sometimes upwards of 30% protein. So it's not, like, uncommon for a whitetail, but at the same time, like, where possible, I'd rather depend on food plots than just the feeding program. Like, when you have a feeding program, you have a feeder, you have a spot you put it in, and you tend to hunt over those areas, and those deer start associating them with danger. So, like, at least if you got, like, a big field or, like, a food plot or something like that, the deer is going to become more comfortable in those areas. Like, otherwise they're going to start hitting if you only have feeders on your property and you've done nothing else, you're going to get a lot of midnight activity, just because he's going to start associating it with danger. That's where the human scent is. Like, he just knows there's a blind 30 yards away, whatever the case is. So, lean heavier on the food plots if Mother Nature is going to allow you to.
Right.
If Mother Nature is not going to allow you to, then you just got to stick with feeders. But honestly, on a lot of these properties, like, I'm thinking about the 500-acre one we just did in Texas. We only had 2 feeders on it because we could do a lot of food. And I don't want 10 feeders because I don't want to have a 1 in 10 chance of picking the right spot.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And all those feeders will absolutely complement my food plotting locations. I want the food to be where the food's going to be. I don't want a random feeder halfway in between because I don't want him to get hung up in daylight hours. I want him to make it to the destination area that's easily accessible for me. Like, I want it all in the same area. So when you are going to do both the feeding program and the food plots, put them all in the same damn spot so that there's something that you can pattern a deer on. He's always coming to the same little 2-acre spot, and then your opportunity to kill him is going to go up dramatically, I would say, as well.
Oh yeah, no, we've definitely we've had to change some stuff or taken into consideration some various things over the years for that very reason. Like we can't be giving these deer too many options and putting stuff everywhere to, you know, for them to pick and choose from. Because then I mean, I feel like it's obvious you're hurting your own chances of seeing that deer at that point, and he's
Complimenting you're complicating the process. Like, I
right.
understand maybe if there's 5 guys, maybe you should have 5 feeders so everybody, if they wanted to, could sit over one. But like, the more you put out there, the more options you give them, the harder it is for you to kill that deer.
Yeah, absolutely. How much do you rely on trail cams to, or is it more of a boots on the ground and I'm building this habitat that is going to do X, Y, and Z that I know it has influence over, or are you using trail cams to figure out kind of how, I don't know, I'm stumbling through my own question, but trying to just that balance between how much you know what you're doing is working versus are cameras telling you that you need to do this, that, and the other.
At this point, I wasn't always this way, but I have a lot of cameras. We have an affiliation with a trail camera company. That's all it comes down to. Like, it makes sense to work with a trail camera company because a lot of clients like to use them, and I also like to use them. But they absolutely have stressed me out in the past because I was using them the wrong way. Nowadays, I'm only using them to gain inventory, and due to what I do for a living and the amount of time I spent in the woods, there's like a mental switch that goes off once I get them on camera, and then it goes to woodsmanship. It's like, how do I kill this deer? I'm not depending on trail camera photos anymore. And that is how you need to use a trail camera, because if you're trying to track him down, I don't care if you're running a camera every 5 acres on average on a property. Trust me, we've done it. Like, you're not catching more than 3 to 5% of the movement, even in that given scenario. I've repeated this a couple times, but we did a 3-year study in 3 states where we sat over trail camera locations, camera every 5 acres, and we basically counted that we were only like we'd sit over that trail camera location, count how many deer crossed the camera versus what we saw in the timber that day, and about 3 to 5% were crossing the camera in front of us. So like of the live action that was taking place within the timber, we were only seeing 3 to 5% of it. So to sit there and bank on your trail camera photos, even on a feeder, and we did it in bait states too, is just not an efficient way to hunt. Now, when he's there, and you know it, great. But even with 20 cameras on 100 acres, like, if you actually think about the amount of mass acreage that your camera lens is actually covering, it's so minuscule. Even if it's in the best areas, it's ridiculous. So I use trail cameras like this. I use a fair amount of them. I just do it to make sure he's alive. When I know he's alive, I don't care if it's at midnight. It's enough for me to go make a play, because those cameras cover so little area, even if I'm running 20 of them, that there's a good chance he's still there in daylight. We just automatically think, oh, this is his nighttime pattern. He's coming from a mile away. He might be behind that camera at 9 a.m. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the only way to get out there and see him is to get out there and see him. So we depend a little bit too much on technology. Great tool if you use it right, though. I use a lot of cameras, but
right.
But woodsmanship is more important.
Right. I want to dive into that a little bit. Kind of the scenario you just gave with you're seeing that deer at midnight. That's your confirmation he's there. Now you can hunt him. I've literally over the years I've had guests on the show in the past that have almost said the opposite. Like, they're not gonna move into the area until they have him moving in daylight at the time that they're gonna be there and stuff, because they don't want to disrupt anything. They don't want to blow him out of there and that kind of stuff. So, you know, you already mentioned the component of, all right, he's there, now I hunt him. So as a woodsman, what are you doing now to try and seal the deal if you have a midnight photo of a buck?
So first and foremost, that is one of those theories that somebody just said it one day, and that's just what we all do. Oh, he's not there in daylight hours. What are you talking about? Like, we cover in such a small amount of acreage, even with a bunch of cameras. Like, that's one of those things. Somebody just said it, and we all just write it in the Bible as our Bible. Like, that's just what we do. Wrong. I've killed a lot of my deer off of midnight pictures, never seeing them in daylight on a camera for sure. And in fact, I think sometimes they do. They do stay away from those cameras. I'll make it very simple for you. Here's what I do, especially if I only got a couple days to hunt a spot. I walk the property until I find him. But when I'm walking the property, I'm sneaking, man. Like I'm ninja mode. If I can have I keep the wind direction in my favor. Like I try to come up with a plan where I think that deer is. And then I will go in there and visually like try and put eyes on that deer, even bump him out of that bed. And then if I know where he was, you give him 24 to 36 hours, he's going to come and check that area back out, and we set up on him. There's one time I was hunting. I know it's not super relative or relatable to Texas, but I was hunting this buck in Illinois, and I jumped him out of the same exact spot 4 days in a row. Same exact spot. Fifth day, I went and I snuck in the back way and I killed him. Same buck. So like, oh, you bump him, he's gone forever. No. So like what I will generally do is I'll go in there and find that buck. And here's what that scenario generally looks like. We always come up with theoretical scenarios. I can tell you exactly what to look for. So you look for your destination food source, you find the sign. Find the sign and you start taking his trail system back to the presumed bedding area. You're going to find a rub line in theory. Maybe it's 2 rubs, maybe it's 20. When those rubs get down to a double-sided rubs on each side, we've hit the base of what I would call the big oak tree. There's a lot of different branches coming into the trunk, but all of a sudden we hit that trunk. It's the final trail leading into the bedroom. When he comes and goes, he's leaving on that same trail. When I hit double-sided rubs, I slow down, I stop. I'm like ninja mode. And then I start looking for the closest scrape that I can find. That's the one we generally sit over once we see double-sided rubs. And if you wanted to keep pushing forward, you will bump that deer out of that bed. That's the exact scenario as to what I'm looking for. And a lot of the whitetails range in a more timber setting where we have more scrapes, rubs, and things like that. Like I'm literally taking the destination food source, starting there, working the sign back till I find double-sided rubs, find the first scrape outside the bedroom, and we're killing them.
And what is your setup look like? Because it doesn't sound like this is like, are you saddle hunting or what are you doing to actually, when you say set up and kill him, or is this already a spot that you have set up somewhere on that trail?
If I own that property, it's predetermined, and I've already like went through this process one time before, and so I know the tree that I have to be in. But otherwise, I'll run and gun with a lightweight hang on my back and do it from there if I'm on public land. And I've killed most of my public land deer by hunting the first scrape outside the bedroom. But you don't know where the bedroom is unless you bump the deer out of it. Right. So you go back there day number 2, and if you do it during the season, like earlier in the season before everybody else starts putting the pressure on, you'll be the first to bump him. He's not going to think nearly as much of it as if it's like December 15th or January in your neck of the woods or wherever. So yeah, if it's a private land parcel, I've figured this out at some point and I have a permanent set that I can sneak into, but if it's public land, I'll run and gun with a set on my back.
I got you. So, and I'm just, my mind's going as you're talking here and I'm thinking through this and everything, but you have, like for a mature buck that has that bedding area, has that home base, if you will, how far in your experience do you see them travel to get to food? And kind of the second part of that question would be, if you know that you have a bedding area that's holding a deer and you are going to put in a food source, how far away do you make it?
Yeah, so I want to make my deer travel.
Okay.
Because the longer he has to travel, the more of a transition area exists, the more I can like work in to go get him. If my transition area is 80 yards and he ain't making it to the food source in daylight hours, like I can't go get him very far. Like I can't cut the distance very much. So the amount of the amount of distance that they travel, there's a direct correlation to wherever the bedding area is. And I've seen that bedding area on 87-degree days or 93. It was one of the two where we killed a buck on public land. It was 700 yards away from the destination field. Now, sometimes the thickest, nastiest little honey hole is 80 yards away. So, like, there's no, like, desired amount of distance. It's wherever the bedroom is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot the second part of your question there, but, like, there's no set in stone amount of distance. It's wherever the best bedding is, and then you have to cut the distance from there. But when I set up a property, I a lot of times want the bedding over on the western side of the property and the food on the east. And if he ain't making it to the food in daylight hours, I don't care if that's a 40-acre parcel. Like I still can hopefully move 200 yards closer, 300 yards closer maybe to go get him. But my access is a little bit easier on that east side. So if I can pull him to me, let's do it. If I can't, let's go get him.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I know we've had to deal down here with, just because we don't get that hard freeze till late in our hardwoods. We got plenty of of acorns and natural food and stuff like that on the ground for them to eat and that kind of stuff. And you
Yep.
know that I mean, I've gone entire hunting seasons where the season was over before we really got a hard freeze that killed off all the food in the woods for them and everything. And so, I have that's one of the areas that I've pulled my hair out personally over the years, is just trying to figure out, man, how do I kill this buck? Like I know where he beds, I know where he's traveling. I have these food sources, and I'm speaking in terms of I've learned this over the years, right? Kind of doing stuff the hard way, as far as I have to get on some of these trails, and I have to get into some of these transition areas more than, okay, I put this food source here, his bedding's here, I know when he's traveling, but he's never making it to my food source. And in my mind, he's still got plenty of food in the woods that he's hitting before he gets to me. And that has influenced how, at least, especially, once we start getting into late October into November, it's kind of changed the way that I've been hunting here lately, I feel like. So
Yeah, you just got to hit the transition area a little bit more. And honestly, if you're building a property, you need to keep that in mind depending on where you're hunting at in the country. You may never get him on the food, but at least if you know he's headed that direction, then um, then at least like design the property in a way that you can cut the distance.
yeah.
Don't ever like handicap yourself and put that bedding area 100 yards away, because if you ain't making it, like you're gonna go in the woods 50 yards, you're gonna be bumping deer right away. Like allow yourself room to move and go get him based off predominant winds and maybe what the thermals are doing, and all those other variables. Give yourself an opportunity in that from that standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I know that we've been going for a little while already, and this subject was something I wanted to get to in this episode. We could probably spend a lot of time on it, but you see a lot of places, you see, different states, different factors that influence management practices and that kind of stuff across the country. How much does state hunting regulations in respective areas influence hunting in that area, the mature bucks that hunters are capable of taking, in your opinion and from your experience? I know that's a broad question because it differs from area to area, but like down here in Texas, for example, I know most counties have this, what they call antler restrictions, where you have to kill one deer, 13-inch inside spread, and then your second deer has to have one unbranched antler, so basically a spike, or a spike with a fork on the other side, a young deer. I personally am not a fan of that, but I didn't know. I was curious what you think of that particular mentality, or the state regulations that are trying to, in their mind, manage populations. If you think it helps or hurts.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely could help or hurt. It depends on the state that you're in. Like I said, there's a lot of different scenarios in a lot of different states. That's Texas still getting stuck in old research, and nobody's ever pushed hard enough to change it, because there used to be this mindset: once a spike, always a spike. Like once an inferior genetic deer, always an inferior genetic deer. There's studies going back to 20, 25 years ago that proves that to be false. Like a spike can turn into a giant.
Yeah.
So to like tell people that they got to kill that with their second tag is a bit asinine. But regulations are everything. Like there's always going to be violators, and it really doesn't matter what the regulations are for those people. But regulations like will deter a lot of, or the majority of people from doing certain things. So certain states, like my home state of Wisconsin here, we're just so far behind on making good like legislative or regulation changes to benefit the deer herd and the quality of hunting, where everybody would benefit, even if you're not a trophy hunter or interested in large deer. Yeah, it means everything. Here's the reality, but as technology is evolving, the deer herd's not. So for us not to evolve our regulations just from that standpoint is asinine, and it's disingenuous, and it's irresponsible on the state agency's behalf to not take this into account every couple of years with the way our technology is now advancing, whether it's thermals on crossbows, thermals on guns, like thermals on this, live streamed that. Like these are all things that make the hunting easier, and it's not getting any easier for the resource. The resource, the deer, is not advancing in technology. Like they're still in the same environment they were back in the 1990s with no technology. So
Right.
to keep advancing technology and not advancing our rule set or any of that stuff is disingenuous and irresponsible to the populations, honestly. So every state is different. There's been certain states that have proven that certain regulation sets are better than others, but there's no one size fits all. We could take everything that Iowa does and copy it. It's not going to work as good because there's different variables. How many people hunt Iowa? This, that. Like there's just yeah, regulations matter, man. They matter a lot.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree that the Texas thing is outdated, and I straight up don't shoot a spike anymore. I think it was several years ago with the last time that I actually filled that tag, and I just because I believe what you just said. I think that that's not a cold, hard and fast rule of inferior genetics or anything like that. And I would be really curious what would happen in a state like Texas that has that rule if we did away with that, and what we would see change.
A more mature deer.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, also, it's like I know that some of these regulations, it's written to the lowest common denominator, or the lowest for lack of a better term, lowest IQ level when it comes to deer hunter, right? Because you take away that, and then maybe you got a guy that's shooting 2 basket rack 6-points every year, and that kind of stuff. And to that point, there might not be especially for a state like Texas, a legitimate fix across the board. I would even like to see him go more kind of, district or area specific. I think county specific would be. I don't know, that's a lot of counties in Texas, but it's still there's got to be a more specific and local component involved. I feel like when it comes to that kind of stuff, we gotta move on.
The biggest issue I do see across the country on literally 95% of properties is a major imbalance. And a lot of people, when I bring up even like the crossbow discussion or like some of these different like technological advance, statements or problems that we're having, people will say deer populations have never been as high as they are right now. Factual. Deer populations have never been imbalanced as they are right now due to the ease of how easy it is to kill a buck now with technology. So what am I seeing on 95% of properties? Massive herd imbalances. And here's what I will say. Of the places that I went this year, the states that I went to, the people that were killing more does were absolutely killing bigger quality bucks because the genetic potential could be met. Habitat isn't great nowadays. We have a lot of invasives and things like that. So if you have too many deer, there's just not the quality of food. Genetic potential is never met for these big bucks. So literally, if you shoot more does over the course of a 4 to 5 year span, it takes 4 to 5 years to grow a big mature buck, you're going to have better quality hunting. And so filling that second tag, instead of shooting that spike, shoot some does. How do you know if you need to shoot does? It isn't for everybody. There shouldn't be certain district deer management units or different places where these things should be implemented. But like, if you're going out and you're seeing 10 does, you probably need to shoot a couple. All right, good rule of thumb right there. Like if you can see 10 of them, go shoot a couple of them, because there's a chance that you have some sort of imbalance or bad buck to doe ratio. That's the biggest problem I see. So don't be shooting those spikes with that second tag. Go slaughter some more does, because we need it as a state, or like as a country. Every state I go to, that's the biggest problem I see.
Yeah.
And direct correlation to killing Boone and Crockett deer killing more does. And maybe it's the farmer next door that kills them. There's somebody in the neighborhood that's doing it. The properties I went to this year where that were killing 200-inch deer, every single one of them had some sort of doe management program that was taken very serious by them or a neighbor. Mm-hmm. Everyone. Yeah. And it doesn't happen always. Like Iowa just has freak genetics. There's places it'll do it. But what could those bucks have been if you would have shot some does?
Yeah.
More habitat.
No, I agree with that, and I will say we're not afraid to shoot does around here.
Good.
It's ultimately I want to put meat in the freezer. Now I want that buck tag to go on a mature buck. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna go intentionally try to hunt and kill just any old buck out there in the woods. But I think what some people in Texas forget, and what the wording actually is in most counties, is that second buck tag is a buck or antlerless tag. And a lot of the way that these regulations are written, you can kill 4 deer or 5 deer maximum per hunter in this county. That's your bag limit, with no more than 2 of them being bucks or antler deer, and only one and then they get into the antler restrictions among those 2 bucks. But the way it's worded, you could go shoot 5 does and fill your tags. I think that's what a lot of hunters in Texas, and I know there's some counties where the wording is a little bit more concrete than that, but a lot of counties, there are counties out there where you can do that, and I feel like hunters miss that. They get hung up on, well, my tag says I can kill a deer with antlers on it, so I'm going to kill a deer with antlers on it. You don't have to, man.
If you have a herd imbalance, you need to shoot more does, guys. And if that wasn't motivation enough for you to go out and shoot more because the genetic potential will be met and you'd have bigger bucks, here's what people need to know. There are state agencies that are actively talking about how are we going to manage the deer populations because hunters aren't doing it anymore. Because technology is so advanced now, it's very easy for us to kill a buck. So we're focused on bucks. We want that, whether you admit it or not, the majority of guys want those antlers on their wall. Like, whatever. You can say what you want in the Facebook comments. Oh, I don't care. I shoot a lot of does. Like, dude, whatever. You ain't tricking nobody. So we all shoot these bucks, and our statistics show it. So, like, there's no beating around that bush. There are state agencies actively talking about drone operations, like drone usage, different technological advances that they can use to eradicate the deer herd in certain areas where the populations are too high because we don't shoot enough does. I am here to tell people, like, there's no motivation for me to say this. Like, I just get to do this for a living, so I get to see it. I get to live it and, like, be in the flesh and see these things. When the government takes over, and I hate to be this guy, I hate to even hear these words come out of my mouth. When they take this power away from you, you ain't getting it back.
Right.
You ain't gonna have deer to hunt on the back 40. Your kids hunting might not be here for our kids. We just take everything for granted, like, in this world. Like, even like our lifestyles, like, dude, a generation and a half ago, like, our families were, like, coming here from someplace else. It wasn't that long ago. Like, things can change in a very quick fashion. So, like, there's a very real opportunity that hunting is not here for our kids in the future. So we need to do a responsible job of managing the herd, because if we don't, they will, and it's happening. It's coming. So
why do you feel like people are more hesitant than ever to shoot does? Is it social media? Is it an unhealthy perception of what hunting is by influencers? What do you feel like has changed?
First and foremost, here's what I'll say. I understand the social media and, oh, the industry did this, the industry did that. The guys that are writing those comments, you're a grown man. Don't let that dictate how you hunt. Like, at the end of the day, like, I don't know, grow a pair. Like, just because somebody does it online doesn't mean you have to do it.
Right.
It's trail cameras. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. It's trail cameras, because now we know what exists, and we ain't going out into the woods to shoot anything other than those bucks. And it's improper use of trail cameras. It's not the trail camera's fault. It's the way we use them.
Yeah.
And I was guilty of using them the wrong way for many years, and they're not giving you all the intel. But, like, now you're not going out to shoot that doe and fill the freezer today because Mr. Big Buck was here last night at midnight. Like, I ain't going out there to shoot a doe now. And so, like, if we never knew what existed, we'd be out there just kind of hunting in a little bit more of an old school manner. And, balancing population at the end of the day is what it comes down to. Like, we're not doing that right now. Populations, yes, are at an all-time high to the point where they're a nuisance, but so is the herd imbalance. And that lies there lies the issue.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've had this conversation with my dad many times because he hunts out there with me, and it's just, I think back in the day when I was growing up hunting, it was like you picked up a rifle, you're like, I'm going to go sit this stand this day. And you sat there, and if you saw a deer and shot one, then great. If you didn't, you might not see anything. You're like, oh, well, try again tomorrow. And you try again the next day. And now it's like I've had to check myself almost every season, I feel like, just because, I'm looking at my cameras. I'm like, oh, yeah, I got deer here this time. Every day I got this buck doing this buck doing that. And so when I go out there and that doesn't happen, I get ticked off about it. I'm like, what's happening? Like, what did I do wrong? And now I'm getting angry, and now it even just turns into not enjoying hunting like you used to. And we gotta check ourselves when it comes to that, because we're losing so many pieces of it. Trail cameras are such a valuable tool, and I use tons of them, man. I use cell cams. My cell cam's been going off this morning, but it's one of those deals where it's like, if we let it control our every move, one we'll run ourselves ragged, and two, I feel like it hurts the future of hunting in so many ways. It hurts ourselves and our own ability to have good woodsmanship skills as well. So,
and I stressed myself out to the max with that, just because I'm in this industry. You feel a sense of competition. You need to outcompete so that you get more business, more work. Like, at the end of the day, like, nobody really cared about what I was ever killing. I've come to that assumption, and I would just live and die by the trail camera and the technology. And, like, yeah, I'd be pissed off if I didn't kill Mr. Big Buck because he was on camera and I should have, and this and that. Nowadays, even with, and this is me being maybe a little more transparent, I should be, but, like, even with a trail camera sponsorship, partnership, all that stuff, we have designated farms where we're going in old school. We ain't going to run cameras. We're going to show up. These are the dates we're going. And I'm going to take my brother-in-laws. I'm going to take my dad. I'm going to take my nephew. And I'm not going to tell my nephew to pass that 3-year-old. Like, I'm not, like, we need to bring the tradition back in hunting, because the tradition is what kept us alive, the camaraderie alive, the people involved.
Right.
And so, like, this whole buy 500 acres and don't let anybody hunt it and tell your kids to shoot this or don't shoot that. Guilty as charged, by the way. That's not the future, man.
No.
That's not. And how do I know? Because I came up in a place where if we saw a deer, it was a big deal. And here I am 30 some years later still hunting. So it didn't take me killing a 160 right off the rip for me to fall in love with this. There's your proof in the pudding. It doesn't need to be that, guys. It doesn't need to be that. And there's a very good chance that that could be the death of it all, honestly, if we keep moving in this direction. Use your technology as a tool to a certain extent, but like don't be banking on it and don't dictate 100% of your hunts off of it. Just hunting doesn't need to be a competition. That's all it comes down to. Whether you're in the industry or you're a Joe Blow who just loves hunting, like just go out there and have fun.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. Whatever that means.
I couldn't agree more, man. We need to get out of that. We need to get out of that me versus them mindset. Like everybody's, I can tell you right now, today, you are going to kill a bigger deer this year up there than I'm going to kill down here, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I got to be pissed off that you killed a bigger deer, right? So
we're living in an era, man, but where technology kills bigger bucks for people. You don't have to be a good hunter to kill a big deer anymore. Like a lot of the deer I see, like no offense to any of the clients and stuff like that, but a lot of them just don't have the knowledge base of the woodsmanship to like kill like take to kill a big deer like they would have had to back in the 90s. But they might be killing bigger deer than me because a lot of different variables, right? Like just because you kill a big deer nowadays doesn't really mean you know what you're doing anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's less impressive for me, even when going on social media. Like people are willing to do too much to kill a big deer sometimes. I'll say that, and so it doesn't even necessarily mean that they're a good hunter anymore. And so for me to feel like I got to compete with that, I'll pass.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man.
Yep.
We've been going for an hour, which is normally what I shoot for, but before I got a few closing questions I asked first time guests on my show, but before we get to those, the last one I'll ask you. I know we've circled a lot of topics in this conversation and dispelled some myths, but are there any other myths floating out there that you would like to put to rest in your experience that we haven't hit on today?
The easiest one to elaborate upon is that trail camera one, dude. Like just because you have him on trail camera at midnight does not mean that he's not there in daylight hours. In fact, like we tend to think that deer, oh, this is just part of his nighttime pattern and he's spending his daylight hours a mile away. Like very rarely is that true. I'd say more often than not, he's on that property in daylight hours. So guys, when you get that midnight picture, ask yourself why. Try to create that plan of attack in your head as to where he could be coming from on your property, and almost guarantee yourself that he's walking behind that camera in daylight hours. And I think if you went out there, set up as strategically as you possibly could, you'd lay eyes on that deer in daylight hours the day after you had him on camera at midnight. So guys, use technology as a tool, but use woodsmanship to ultimately kill these deer.
Yeah. I agree with that. Do you put when you set your trail cameras up, do you, like I've seen guys putting them high, I've seen guys doing creative things with them. Do you think it matters, or do you believe that regardless of where it is, deer are going to know if there's something in their woods that's not supposed to be there?
I think they're gonna know. I refuse to hang my cameras high. Now I just did a property with somebody else who likes to hang their cameras high, and we hung the cameras high, but I don't want to encourage a deer to look up. I don't want to pattern or like I just don't want to increase the amount of times like he feels like he has to look up for danger because I'm generally up in a tree. So I'd rather hang my cameras low, and selfishly, like the trail camera pictures just look better if you put them low too. So it gets a little bit more excited about that buck. But you put them up high, you put a trail camera up high, 10 feet high, that buck's going to look probably 20 inches smaller than what he actually is too. So it's hard to really gauge from a management perspective if that's the deer you want to go after if you start hanging them too high. But I'm keeping them right at belly button height, if not even a little bit lower sometimes.
I got you.
And they're all over, man. They're from food sources. Now we do some on mock scrapes, like just on trails, intersections. Like to only put your cameras on one of those things, it would be silly. So put your cameras in a bunch of diverse locations so that you're constantly getting bucks on camera throughout the entire year. Like there's certain times of the year where they're not hitting that food source. Now the trails are hot. Now the scrapes are hot. So like just put them in a plethora of different locations, not all in one like monoculture of locations, not all in the same thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love it. Well, man, a few questions I got for you as we wrap this thing up. First one, I ask everybody, it's a simple question, but sometimes it leads to some good discussion. You can only pick one, gun or bow.
I'll take the unpopular opinion here. I'm gonna pick a gun.
All right.
God only allowed me to feel that feeling so many times. So I understand one is harder than the other. Very well aware. but God only allowed me to feel that feeling so many times. So if I can maybe expedite the amount of times I get to feel that awesome feeling of pulling the trigger on an animal that I chose to shoot, or whatever the case is, like to wrap your hands on the animal, like you only get so many times in your lifetime that you get to do that. So to experience that as many times as I possibly can, whether it's with me, my dad, my nephews, my kids, like in the future, the more of those experiences I have means the more memories that I have. And using the more efficient weapon in that given scenario would probably allow that to happen. A lot of management would go into it. We're not just shooting deer to shoot deer, but it would allow us more good memories and more opportunities and more time spent together in the woods. And in fact, I'll be honest with you, some of my favorite memories are behind a gun in gun camp with people, behind rifles, and not necessarily with archery equipment. I know it's not the cool answer, but it is the truth.
No, I love that answer, man. I got a lot of respect for it because I've been bow only for the last 13 years,
I
and
did it, yeah.
I love archery hunting. But this last year, I kind of had a epiphany on a few things because my son, he's 8, and he's got the bug. He's wanting to go out there and everything. And you know, really the last 2 seasons combined, it was really my realization that I'm not giving up archery hunting, but I can't archery hunt like I want to archery hunt with an 8-year-old. So that's caused me to kind of swallow my pride as a bow hunter a little bit, and for lack of a better term, nothing wrong with rifle hunting, but you know, get a little bit back into the rifle game so that I can have some enjoyable hunting memories and experiences with my son, like I remember having with my dad growing up. So, yeah.
If you truly enjoy being archer only, then be an archer only. But don't let social media make you feel like you got to be the solo hunter.
Right.
Don't let social media feel like you got to be the archery only guy. Do what's fun.
Yeah.
Hunting's supposed to be fun, guys. And the inches don't matter and the scores don't matter. Like, hunting is not a competition, and it never should be. So do whatever's fun within legal means to a certain extent. But do what's fun for you, no matter who you are and what situation you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, next question, you already mentioned it, that you got a lot of great memories and everything in the past with, behind the gun and everything. But I always ask every guest on the show, what is one of your all-time favorite hunting memories that you have?
Thankfully, it was actually caught on film.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we were hunting Missouri a couple years back, and now we'll actually hunt this farm this year, and it's the No Trail Camera Farm. And we're going to recreate gun camp on this farm, on this cabin that I built. But there's like a designated deer where I told my dad, I was like, Dad, don't shoot this thing. Like, he's going to be a freak if we could pass him. And I shoot my number 1 target deer that morning right under the stand. He dies underneath the stand, all on film, beautiful. And we're down just like appreciating the deer, just like sitting next to it. And the camera guy's on me, we're chit-chatting, also. And keep in mind, like, my dad's a little bit up there in age, like just doesn't have the opportunities to get out there nearly as much anymore. And next thing you know, like, he calls me up. He's like, "Yeah, I shot a good one. I'm not sure which one it was, and it was the buck we said not to shoot." But like, the fact that we got to share a day together, and I was going through my phone today. Actually, well, you sent me. Oh, I sent you the pictures actually of the bucks that we killed that day.
That's from that day.
That's that
awesome.
Day. So,
awesome.
I killed my big mature number 1, and he killed a 2-year-old that had freaky genetics. That could have been a giant, but like, that's what it was all about. And then me and my dad cracked a beer together mid-morning after that, celebrated a little bit, and just like shared the woods, shared our experiences. Like, very rarely do you get that opportunity to do that and both have success in the same day. I think my nephew killed one maybe later, or that was archery season. Killed one the same night. I don't know, but yeah, that, like, anytime that you get to do that, even in a situation where somebody shot the wrong deer, still one of my core memories.
Yeah.
So like, that really speaks to like what hunting should be, at least to me. Yeah. Sharing the woods with other people. My best memories are not alone anymore.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. You even just telling that story that brought back a bunch of memories in my own mind too. So yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
I mean, the top 3-4 memories, like, as I was trying to decide which one I was going to explain to you, all had to do with other people. None of them were just me. So that's what it comes down to for me, man. Just keeping camp alive, keeping deer camp alive, and keeping that tradition and camaraderie alive.
No, it all has to do with other people. I would say probably out of everyone I ask that question to, probably 90% of the answers I get involve somebody else or somebody else killing an animal. Like, hunting is 100% a community thing, I believe. So.
And as cool as it is to be the solo guy and go out there and do all these hunts and have success, like, and put all these deer on the wall, guess what? One deer, these deer are getting thrown in the dumpster. I ain't taking them to the grave with me.
Right.
So like, if it means I kill a little bit smaller deer, but I have great memories going to my grave on my deathbed, and I can look back and smile on that, that's gonna be way more important to me. And I've realized that. So like, that's just, I'm just going to try and create as many memories of people as I possibly can throughout my hunting career. That's going to be number one for me.
Yeah, I agree, man. Last question. You've gotten to have a lot of great hunting experiences and hunt some pretty cool states, but what's on your personal bucket list? What are hunts in your life that you would consider once in a lifetime if you had the opportunity to do them?
I think whitetails, outside of British Columbia, Alberta, but public land in grizzly country.
Public land in grizzly country. All right.
Yeah, hunting deer in hard locations has always interested me. Like, just to go sit, and I do it, don't get me wrong, but to go sit in a box blind and kill a big buck in Iowa, like, I don't know how much skill that takes anymore.
Right.
To go mano-a-mano with an animal in his environment where there's other predators involved, it is like the ultimate. And it's one of the most aesthetic areas in the world, honestly. Like, honestly, just south of Banff National Park and stuff like that. Like, there's whitetails there, and there's a plethora of grizzlies. But it's some of the most beautiful area in the world. And if you could kill a 125-inch deer in that area, like, that would be the ultimate accomplishment. Now, I don't know if my wife would ever allow me, especially having kids, to go and like dabble with anything like that anymore. But it would be a very dangerous hunt, but it would be the ultimate like mano-a-mano apex predator hunt. It would be a well-earned buck for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
that's probably something that nobody else is ever going to repeat on your podcast.
No, I've heard most of the time it's, it's a mountainous hunt or Alaska for something, and I have those dreams too. And every once in a while it's been a deer hunt here or there, but I've never heard that before. I like that. That's pretty legit. So.
Just killing deer in hard places. That's what's always interested me. And we have the Upper Peninsula of Michigan up on Lake Superior and the Canadian border up there. It's very similar without the grizzlies, but hard hunting. And you earn it and it feels better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Brett, tell everybody where they can find you and follow along.
Yeah, if you are looking to book a visit, whitetaillandmanagement@gmail.com. This is the time of year you need to book, because when November hits and everybody gets angry, then they start flying in, and I honestly miss people. It exploded last year, and so it's going to explode again this year. So get on the books, whitetaillandmanagement@gmail.com. Otherwise, follow along on social media. Whitetail Land Management Services is the name of the company, and come to the social platforms for some good conversation. I'm always bringing up some sort of popular or unpopular topics, and just to get conversation going, to talk about regulations or what's going on in the hunting industry or the hunting world. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. When is, like you just said, now's the time to book, but is there an ideal time of the year for you to come out? Like, just in general? I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully I've done enough properties. Like I said, so it's all preliminarily done on my end via mapping. I know what I'm going to walk in and see. It's ideal to see everything when there's no foliage, but like, I can do it any time of the year. I really can at this point. I think somebody earlier in their career would need the foliage off, but like, there's so many other variables that I'm looking at prior to ever getting to your property. I can do it anytime, honestly.
Gotcha.
But if you're in Texas, don't call me for June or July. I ain't doing that again.
I don't blame you one bit.
Snakes and hogs and not crocodiles, gators, everything. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, if it won't poke you, it'll try to eat you or kill you. So
that's about it, man.
Well, Brett, thanks for spending a little over an hour with us on Fall Obsession Podcast today. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Appreciate the invite, man.
Yeah, you bet. Guys, go follow Brett and everything he's got going on over there. Thank you all for listening, and I'll be back with you all again next week for another show. I will catch you then.